Hello, this will be my first video in a series of videos following my process on recreating my tower defense game in the Unreal Engine. Most of the footage I will have will be pulled straight from my streams on Twitch. Now let's break down the game idea first. The original idea formed during my last few months at college when I decided as a final project I'd try to make a tower defense game. There was a few elements though I wanted to make it stand out from the rest. One was the theme. I designed it originally to be steampunk versus diesel punk. Now, while a quick Google search will show both of these terms will show very close designs to each other, but there's distinct differences that I wanted to capitalize on. Diesel punk has a more military feel, while also being very grungy and dirty, while steampunk on the other hand is clean, but with a junkyard feel, lots of scrap, ragtag put together. My next element I chose was for more player interaction. Most RTS and tower defense games will give you the overlord position looking down on the battlefield, but I wanted the player to get more into battle in a few different ways. One of the biggest was going to be an ultimate ability, where you assume control of a tower for a short period of time and I supercharge that tower for a little bit of time while you take aim at enemies. Other ideas I toyed with were laying traps and pitfalls for the enemy as well. One mechanic in the original was to have shortcuts in the terrain that the AI would take, but they were blocked off by gates or buildings, and then the enemy could take aim at the buildings and destroy them. After a while, the building or the gates would be destroyed, and the AI could then use the shortcut. I did this as a way to teach the player not to lay down all the resources down the line like a typical tower defense. In a usual tower defense, you'll lay down towers close by where the enemies first spawn at and continue to add towers as they go. In this way, I could teach the player to distribute their towers evenly, because they can work very hard on one part of the terrain, and then all of that will be for nothing if they open up the shortcut and now they're skipping whole portions of the map. I worked on this game for a few months and went through so many iterations. I had multiple professors I was going through each week to give critique on what I should analyze and make better, what should be reworked, and what was better. It was playable, and the core concepts were all there, but unfortunately the project was cancelled when I was told I wasn't allowed to use it for my final. It sat on the back burner for the last few years while I worked on other games and projects with other teams. However, I would randomly get the urge to work on one particular thing in Unreal Engine, AI. And I always wanted to learn and play with what Unreal had to offer. The first tower defense was built in Unity, but I felt I could go a lot further with the Unreal Engine. It was then I made the decision that I was going to make a vehicle AI and see how far I got with it to see if I could pursue this interest any further. I spent months learning and writing AI behavior trees in Unreal. Unreal has built-in nodes for regular characters moving around from point A to point B, and navigate around terrain and obstacles. But there was nothing that could do anything with vehicles. What's the path to my destination? What angle do I need to steer? What if something's in my way? How hard should I hit the gas, or do I need to hit the brakes? All of these things needed to be coded in, as well as vehicle settings on top of that, such as wheel, suspension, horsepower. It took a while, but after combining multiple resources from other people in the same situation as me on the forums, led to be my first working cars. They were pretty dumb, I admit, compared to say like a driver in Grand Theft Auto, but they got there most of the time. I felt their potential was met since they didn't need to be super smart in a tower defense game. This should just about bring us up to speed where I'm starting to stream. My first stream I wasn't able to record as I was still new to the platform. Some new ideas I want to bring to the table this time is a literal table. I want the entire level to look like it's on a game board on a table. To really push the feeling of a game board, I want to use a miniature effect called tilt shift. Tilt shift is a camera effect that makes things appear miniature and zoomed really far away. It also loses focus on the top and bottom edges. I think this effect will focus in on small details on levels and models, so I don't have to make them look so generic since you're going to be far away. Another idea is going to be building upon the blocked areas with protectable areas, such as guarded shortcuts and towns that the enemies can drive through. It's possible I can use this during some of the levels as a main objective or a secondary objective to protect a town. So with all that out of the way, let's go on to the actual footage from my stream. I'll be speeding through a lot of this and kind of talking over most of it. I had already gotten some of my old vehicles in and working with the new AI system, so I was importing in an old turret to begin testing. I was doing a lot of cleanup on the old models because the old ones were not optimized, and I want the whole game running in just gray box mode. Gray box mode is just where I make very generic looking models, just enough to get the job done and get the game completely working where I want it, before I make anything look pretty. I added hierarchy to the pieces, so this will form a skeleton inside of Unreal Engine. Unreal has a really neat feature that you don't actually have to do rigging on some props, and it'll make its own skeleton based on what is parented to what. It uses all this based on pivot points, so wherever I set the pivot at is where the bone is going to rotate. Here I began setting up code for rotating to aim at the enemy. No shooting yet, just want to make sure we look at the enemy. In the end, I ended up reusing a lot of code from my enemies since they also aim and shoot back at the turrets. As you can see, my first test went, well, and then the next, and the next. And I actually cut a lot of these out. Finally found the problem from when I copied the code from my enemy's script. There was some stuff just not plugged in. So now it should finally work. Well, we've successfully made the world's shyest weapon. So the problem was an improper pivot angle on the model when I first imported it. I could just rotate everything in the code or in the editor to compensate, but I want most of this to be reusable from turret to turret, so fixing the problem at the source is the best. Great, now it's working as it should. Just to really test it, let's make sure we aim in all directions at the enemy by letting the enemy go up on this ramp here. Now we can start working on projectiles for the tower to shoot. I wanted all the bullets to stem from the same master bullet, with each child having different parameters and different behaviors. This way, the code for targeting, spawning, and doing damage will all work no matter what, but they can each have custom parameters for doing damage or how fast they go, so if I want some to do, say, splash damage, or if I want one to shoot heat-seeking rockets, I have that ability to change it. Now I'm setting up the code for firing to use a cooldown on the turret. I'll also only want it to shoot if I actually see the enemy and he's not behind a wall or anything. I tried to let both enemies and the turrets use the same bullet class by having them ignore turrets or enemies depending on who shot which bullet. So if an enemy shot a bullet, it will ignore other enemies and only hit turrets, and vice versa for the other ones. By sheer will, I want to use modularity for everything that I do, but it's going to come back and bite me. This is where my error code troubles started. Now the problem was that my bullet was being destroyed as soon as it spawned, so I was getting errors for trying to set anything on the bullet while it was spawning, so I couldn't tell it who to ignore and who to hit because it was being destroyed almost as soon as it was spawning. Many headaches later, I decided to come back and just revisit this after a while and work on something else. I wanted to eliminate any variables that could be affecting the bullet for when I get the collisions working, so I wanted to be aiming perfectly at the enemy and make sure it's a guaranteed hit. To do this, I had to add an aim offset, or basically have the turret lead the shot since the target's always going to be moving. First, I let the turret shoot at least a bullet no matter what with no collisions, that way I could visualize it moving through the air. I added a blue line so I could visualize the aim offset and show where the turret's actually taking aim at. I didn't need to do this for the enemies already since they'll be shooting at stationary targets, which will be the turrets. Unknowingly, this also showed me that I can have turrets aim upwards at a target like they were shooting in an arc, so win-win. It's subtle here, but you can see the before shot with the turret trying to keep up while aiming, and the after shot with it leading the shot and hitting it every time. Now I can go back and figure out these bullet collisions.
Oh, fuck.
I must have tried hundreds of combinations and debug messages on screen to figure out why my bullets were colliding as soon as they spawn. I opted to separate the bullets for enemies and turrets so that way I could hard set who they can and cannot collide with. So much for modularity. The results were not surprising. This time I thought that maybe my overlap collisions were not firing correctly, so I attempted to use an event that fires as soon as the bullet physically touches the enemies. Yeah, let's get rid of that. After what seemed like an eternity, we finally got the results we were looking for. Basically, I have this sphere on my turrets, right? So this sphere's only purpose in life is to stop enemies from getting close and right up next to the tower when they shoot at it. That's all it does. It blocks the navigation so the enemies cannot get right up next to the tower. But it appears that it's also firing collision events for things that hit it, like say a bullet. I would have actually found this hours ago if I'd simply output the name of the first thing the bullet collided with when it spawned, and it would have debugged the name right on the top of the screen and showed me the name of that bubble. Regardless, it is working now. That should wrap up everything I have for this video today. I expect this one to be longer than the next ones because of all the backstory I had to put in. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below or catch me in my stream on Twitch to get answers right away. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.